Challenging. Thank you very much, Barend. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker. And actually, this is a speaker with a reputation. When I was in Julian 4 years ago, somebody said, you know, they have this fantastic Theosophical order of service, and there's somebody serving on that board, and you really should have an opportunity to meet her one day. And actually, I did, not very long after. And she's going to be our next speaker, but she also has a reputation, at least since yesterday, for something else with this large society. So we have to keep an eye on her, because I still don't know really what she was arrested for. She also serves on the Theosophical, I should put that right, oh my.
Book Gift Institute.
Book Gift Institute, it's a bit dark here. And she is the former president of the Theosophical Society in America. She's Betty Bland.
Good job. Thank you, Barend. That was really a good introduction, a solid look at religion as it should be. Unfortunately, it's not always as it should be, is it? And so what I'm going to talk about in following him in Theosophy and Religion is considering some of the challenges of dealing in the mundane world with religion, and hopefully some solutions that the Theosophical Society can bring to it. Let's see. Actually, from earliest times, as he said, there was the wisdom tradition was available, but there was a tendency for humanity to anthropomorphize God, as you mentioned, and humanity was very fragile in its early years, and they were at the whims of nature and just survival, and so they felt that what happened was the result of capricious gods, and so they would tend to develop rituals and ideas that would protect them from this capricious God, saying that whatever good happened was because the gods were pleased, whatever bad happened was because the gods were against them. And the early Greek poet and philosopher Xenophanes said that if horses had a god, it would be a horse. And that's exactly the way people were in that time. They were trying to understand how nature worked. So perhaps they even had some of their mythology come from a flying saucer that might have landed, and there are all kinds of traditions that there could have been extraterrestrial beings coming in. It might possibly have been visitors from the Manasaputras that brought knowledge in, and then they would have clarified their religion, but again, they would fall away from it. And finally, always, there has been the perfect beings, the ones who could bring the wisdom in. So, in my thinking, one of the greatest corruptions of religion has been the fact that people felt that they were subject to capricious gods and that they had to have rituals and beliefs that would protect them, and that the gods would reward prescribed behavior and punish behavior that was irritating to the gods. So that belief in arbitrary punishment, I think, is at the root of fearfulness of humanity, that say that my God has to be better than your God because I've got to be more effective. I've got to be right so that my God will protect me. And that's a very great danger, and a danger that all of us have seen people experience. So the wisdom religion, however, is always at the root of this. There has always been a parallel thread, as we know, of the ancient wisdom. And that thread, no matter how hidden, has persisted at the core of all initial foundation religions, as Barent said so well. And from time to time, ones have surfaced, and just so for your thinking to get it broad enough to think of all the different aspects we've had in the history of the world. I have a few. I would add Moses, Zoroaster, Confucius, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Mahadevira, the founder of Jainism, Siddhartha Buddha, Hermes Trismegistus, Socrates, and Krishna and Christ, Socrates and Krishna and Jesus. And it's interesting that both Krishna and Jesus, I think this is an interesting picture. I thought maybe a few pictures would be helpful. But Krishna and Jesus are the second person of their Trinity in their two traditions, and so it's interesting to have them juxtaposed. And then there's a quick reminder of the scope and differences of the archaeological remains, and this is to give you a sort of a global perspective. There is certainly China, Japan's Shinto, Cambodia's Angkor Wat, India's Buddhism, which spread, of course, throughout Asia, Mesopotamia's ziggurats, Egypt's pyramids, the Peru, the Inca's capital, the Mayan Peninsula, Shaman, Arizona's Hopi, England's pre-Celtic, and Greek's Parthenon brings us closer to current times. But again, think of all the different expressions, and these are just a few. For a number of centuries, the existence of these many approaches to the relationship with deity was generally workable to some degree. But as cultures clashed, as we had travel and trade, the clashing became more violent, and certainly as the Christian Crusades, I think, began an era in our Kali Yuga, which has never ceased to have a lot of violence, and all due to religious intolerance. Okay. I'll bring it to some of the history with Madame Blavatsky. As you remember, when she came to India, and I think Colonel Olcott and Madame Blavatsky were sent to India partly because of the British Raj and the suppression of religion. there in India during the British Raj. And they joined with the Brahmo Samaj in their early attempts, and they found this did not work. And it did not work because the priests were trying to make it to the benefit of their own sectarianism and their own power, rather than being a mutually cooperative action. So even though this was an ill-fated attempt and they realized it was a mistake to try to work with them, and it caused a rift with the Brahmo Samaj people, the Brahmanans, actually they worked well together as separate entities, and HPB always welcomed the Brahmins into the society. She appreciated the esoteric side of the Brahmin society, but definitely had to maintain a separateness. And yet, she cultivated work with them and other religions. Particularly, she and Olcott were adamant in cultivating respect for other religions. In fact, after they learned their lesson with the Brahmins, they actually joined the Buddhist. And this is it's a picture of an actual artistic rendition that's in the Vijayananda Vihara temple, Buddhist temple. And it commemorates in 1880 that they were the first Westerners to take the Panchasila vows. And in fact, this is a larger section of the picture that shows a copy of the document signed by Olcott commemorating the event. And there's a statue at Colombo celebrating Olcott, and he's really a national hero for the Buddhist. What he did, he developed the Buddhist Catechism, as you remember. And you may not realize that he designed the Buddhist flag, which is a depiction of the legendary striations of the bands of color that make up the Buddha's aura. I think that was a creative way to approach it. Now, relative to religion, HPB urged us to actively work to end superstitious dogmas, but to build respect among faith traditions. And I feel strongly that the Theosophical Society has a real calling in this arena. And she said the declared policy of our society and paper, because this was in a writing, this is from the collected works. War to death to every unproved human dogma, superstition, bigotry, and intolerance. To show at least an outward regard for the respective religions, not only of our members, but of any man or woman, and to protect, in the case of need, the creeds of the former from the unjust assault and persecution of other religionists. Finally, never to preach or force upon an unwilling ear our own personal, least of all, sectarian views. The success of our mission depends upon the crushing down and complete extirpation of that spirit of intolerance. That's pretty powerful. She urged us to fight, but she indicates that the fight is a battle of kindness, tolerance, exposure, education concerning alternative views, and the success of our mission does depend on it. Our founders supported beneficial aspects of religious traditions but fought against priestly domination, exclusivism, superstition. Today, people of religious rigidity and intolerance continue to view Theosophy with a great deal of animosity. They're very suspicious of us because the open-minded view is a direct threat to their sectarianism. And yet, Theosophy is the elixir for our times. Our human survival depends on building bridges of understanding to restore harmony in the world. So, as a bridge, these are some of the points that I got out of that quote that she said: to eliminate intolerance, to protect against, and this would be a charge to us, to protect against persecution, refute superstition, and treat all with respect, promote religious interchange, participate in dialogue. And I added a few that weren't specifically in her quote, but to recognize core beliefs as we do in the ancient wisdom, to share inspiration, inspirational exercises, activities that are at the core of spirituality. And this was one of Barent's points, and I think it's one of the most important for every one of us, is to live by the highest ethics, to promote caring community, and if we want to promote that, we have to be that in every way. This slide is one that I borrowed from Vic Hao Chen. I think he is really a profound thinker and teacher in our society, and this is from his self-transformation workshop. And Barent referred to these ideas also. That is that there are various levels. There's ritual and ceremony, there's the dogma, but on the inner aspect of religion, there's always that inner core of spirituality, which it was at the source of the religion. And it's when people are living in their religious beliefs from the outer edges of religion, in the areas of dogma and ritual and superstition, that's where the conflict occurs. But if anyone gets to the deeper inner core, the spirituality, there can be harmony. So it stands out very clearly that one of the resolutions is to encourage people to go to the deeper aspect of their own faith tradition, and I guess to find religion rather than the a-religion part of their religion. And it's far better, most of us come from a religious tradition, and it's far better to delve into our own inner nature than to try to, often you see in the New Age people chasing exotic religions just as they are seeking spirituality. But it's far better to recognize that in our limbic brain system, we are indoctrinated very early with certain symbols and essence of a religious culture. And that is buried within us and can be inspirational to us. So why create something different if you can go back to your core to find inspiration. And it's interesting that Blavatsky, of course, did not claim a particular religion, but she grew up in Russian Orthodoxy, and she confessed to being inspired just by the chants of the priests, or when she went to a Russian Orthodox service. It touched that inner core of inspiration for her. So, in every case of interreligious gatherings, and I think we can be instrumental in building some of these bridges, one of the things that can help make them effective is to have inspirational practices such as chants or prayers or meditations that delve one deeper into the spirit of the tradition. And these are some of the theosophical perspectives that we certainly recognize, these principles that underlie all religions. And I guess I can read them to you in case you can't see it in the back. The vastness of the cosmos, there's a wholeness, interconnectedness, and that creates responsibility. Evolution, which also means there's purpose to life. Self-direction, reincarnation, and karma. My husband teaches Sunday school class in an Episcopal church, and he always talks about reincarnation and karma. You can gradually inculcate these ideas and that builds tolerance. Unity, which produces compassion, seeking truth and understanding. Inspiration is an important part. We are at this conference to explore how we might apply these principles for better interaction among fellow seekers, as well as how to make these principles living concepts for others and ourselves as we endeavor to impact world culture. So this is a quote that I found from HPB that I particularly liked, calling us to put our shoulders to the wheel of social life rather than to be a coward, hiding in our own personal religiosity without being involved in life. Now, I know I'm about out of time, so I'm just going to run through some of these real quickly, but I wanted to share them with you because it's fun. Live the life, begin the work, and that's where we have to be. Now, I included some ideas of things you might do. This is at Olcott, Interfaith Prayer event. The Parliament of World Religions, and that's Kirby von Mater, Grace Kanoki, Carolyn Van Horn, Rada Bernier, and Joy Mills, for those who would like to know. We were involved with the Dalai Lama, and one of the things that's interesting is these symbols behind the Dalai Lama were decorated by youth groups who were studying various religions and then decorating the symbols. Participating in an ITC conference. I think Jan Kent deserves appreciation for all the work he's done on it. And I also had to include the picture of Sally Colbert, whom we miss very much. And I had the opportunity to meet her, and of course she's talking with Tim. And I see Judy Salzman in the back talking with me. So as we make this approach, we always, when we are working with interfaith traditions and with our own faith tradition, to be anchored in the ancient wisdom, to be spirit connected. Wherever truth is discovered, it must connect with our inner being, or it's not truth. It's got to be a living truth. And then recognizing that, as Barent said at the end of his talk, that to integrate philosophy, science, and religion is crucial. And so, to remember again that there is no religion, no dharma higher than truth, and to be able to live that, and from our theosophical traditions, we need to go beyond dialogue and to move into meaningful action in life, in building tolerance and peace. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Well, any clarification? I think that was... Just one, not just two, I think, actually. So, Betty, could you get up for just one more minute?
I just want to know why you got arrested.
I got arrested because I'm putting into practice my principles. And in my state of North Carolina, there have been egregious legislations passed against the poor people, against education, against the ecology, environment. And so I've been participating in what is called Moral Mondays, and through the civil disobedience, I got arrested, and I'm proud of it.
Thanks for asking that. Now we know. Now we know. But thanks for sharing that. Tommy.
Yes, I had a question. Part of the presentation, and we don't mean to put words in your mouth, we think it had to do with the, anthropomorphizing the divine principle, and the challenges with that, and perhaps that's one of the steps in the degradation from religion into a religion.
Yes.
Well, last night I was reflecting on part of the conversation yesterday that had to do with the Mahashohan, which I know nothing about except what I learned yesterday, and how it's kind of more of a force than a master. And if it's a force, and we have people who are maybe talking about, well, why wouldn't it become a person? Isn't that the first step of theosophy, anthropomorphizing the divine?
I think that that has been a danger in the Theosophical Society in the early years particularly. And the reason the masters said, well, you must put down the cant of masters, because our tendency is to worship. And people were wanting to turn the masters into kinds of gods. And I have known of elderly, sweet, dear theosophists who said, well, the masters will help us, sort this problem out, or whatever it is, instead of saying, they are a force for good, but they never give us specific directions, as has been said, that we actually have to work it out ourselves, or they'd be taking on our karma. But that's a tendency, that's something. Now, they may or may not be incarnate at a particular time, or ever, depending on the level. They have passed through the human evolution at some point in time. So they have that potential within them. But the ultimate force has to be beyond anything we can imagine anyway.
Thank you. So live the life, begin the work. And let's begin the workshops. Every workshop has a workshop.